It's the other benefit. I kind of got into this game 5 or 6 years, which was a cloud native automation solution at the time. We typically didn't find other companies' products in there. What we found was homegrown scripts, a guy, right, that knew how to do things and that would get on the server as root and start making changes, those sorts of things. And what these companies find out is that guy, he gets hit by a bus, and all of a sudden, all of your, carefully crafted delivery pipelines fall apart, or the scripts get lost, right? Somebody didn't do the backup correctly. So having a system that anybody can push the button and it does the same thing every single time brings a lot of benefits. It also brings a lot of onboarding, right? If you're trying to bring on a lot of developers over time, because those developers can see the best practices that have been developed by your particular company or your particular team over time, and actually codified into the set of workflows and processes. That make sense? Great.
Thank you.
Yep. So we've talked tonight about DevOps and how you can modernize your software processes, how companies can take advantage of it. I wanted to take a last few minutes before we start taking, I guess, more questions, and talk about where we think the future of automation is going. And this, I think, it's interesting because as we all look at our careers, careers are a long time thing, right? You're going to be doing this for the next 5, 10, 30 years. So, couple of things, right? So we believe, and what we are chasing is the fully automated enterprise, right? So everything that we can do that takes a human being out of the equation where it makes sense, right? And then it gives control back to human beings in terms of governance and insight is a good thing. So a couple of things, and I'm hoping that some of you are going to challenge me on some of these, but actually this whole idea of we have public cloud infrastructures like Amazon or Rackspace, we have private cloud infrastructures like OpenStack deployments inside of data centers. We have hybrid clouds where we may have VMware running inside a data center and VMware running outside, and we stitch them together. That all goes away, right? So right now, that's what we call cloud. You guys may have already run into the fact that cloud is kind of used in a lot of different ways, and not everybody agrees on what cloud is. I'm telling you that cloud is a concept, right? Cloud is a model for how we deploy applications, and in the future, because of improvements in our bandwidth, our network bandwidths, improvements in our security systems, improvements in isolation, we will be able to place workloads anywhere in the world, regardless of who's actually running the data center, whether it's Microsoft or Amazon or our companies. And this term cloud really is not going to be a thing anymore, right? So I coined the term global execution fabric. So we'll see if that one, I'll come back here in a few years and see if that one catches on. But that's one thing. I think that if you envision a world where every application has the opportunity to run any place in the world, and the only thing that determines where it gets placed is policies that your business has set in terms of how much money can they spend to run this application, how much data does it require, because data is heavy and moving data is expensive, or compliance reasons, right? So certain workloads, certain applications need to run in certain places, or data needs to stay inside of company borders for data sovereignty reasons, or those sorts of policies will determine where things go, not not limitations of, I can only use, this public cloud infrastructure because they have a high-speed pipe between me and them. Cloud management, right? So this idea that, we have programs that allow me to manage where my workloads get placed, that goes away. As I said, I think that the placement of the workloads and where workloads and applications are actually run will be just policy driven, and that gives you the added bonus. Remember I said earlier that we should let the computers do what the computers do? Computers can decide where workloads should best be run. PaaS systems, anybody here running a PaaS? Anybody ever use Heroku? No. AppFog? That was my company. So PaaS systems are awesome for developers, right? And a lot of the cloud native guys are using PaaS systems like Cloud Foundry or OpenShift. The interesting thing is that they believe that they have the right model, right? That the way that developers develop code and they push it into the system, and the system basically then implements the deployment and provisioning processes. I believe that they have the developer part of it right. It's really a super environment for developers, and if you ever get a chance, and I'm sure you will, because this is kind of where things are going, to see how Heroku works or see how Cloud Foundry works from a developer's perspective, you should do it. What these guys are missing is that if you want to put these things into the enterprise, the back-end production systems are much more complicated than what they're modeling with platform as a service, right? So I believe that there's a window of opportunity for PaaS, but ultimately PaaS will merge with that traditional release automation that we talked about to actually do the best of what PaaS does for developers, but then give the operations guys the tooling and transparency and orchestration capabilities that they need inside their enterprise. Automation will become increasingly driven by computers. So how many people here understand how Google works once you type something in? Oh, be brave, somebody has to know. There's a lot of algorithms and a lot of heuristics that are going on behind that, right? And I don't pretend to know either, actually. But automation increasingly will start to use these heuristics and take advantage of the fact that we are collecting a lot of data and we're doing learning to actually make better decisions for us in terms of our automation. We talked about this one at the top. As soon as we have the ability to put workloads wherever they can run, then the business policies can actually dictate where they do run. Cloud brokerage is a concept that says, I'm going to have a business that companies come to, and I'm going to sell them public cloud, essentially, and I will make money by arbitraging across the various options. That capability will be in the systems that we build, but that as a category will never emerge, right? Because the time has passed where that's become valuable. Okay, I'm gonna ask one more question. Docker. Any Docker people here? Yes. Okay, I finally got one right. Yeah. So containers are awesome. So I talked about PaaS systems a little bit ago. The not so well known fact is every PaaS is based on containers, right? And has been for several years, right? That's how PaaS systems like AppFog or Cloud Foundry can actually manage their pool of resources and oversubscribe the execution hardware and virtualization systems, right? And you do that by not splitting things into VMs that might be 2 gig. You do it by splitting it into containers, which might be 128 meg. So you can get a lot more density with containers. That's going to be super important. And then if, you know, the Docker guys here know that Docker is not just a collaborative environment with the Docker hubs and such, but it's also a packaging standard, right? So we can use those standards to actually make our workloads more portable. And remember now, we've envisioned a world where workloads can be arbitrarily placed. And now I've got a packaging format that lets me actually do that portability. So quick recap, application release automation, right? So what will happen here in a DevOps way is the way that we manage our data centers today. And this is, as Todd mentioned, this is like the mode 1 legacy. It's what most data centers are running today. It will start to modernize itself, right? So we see release management here, and this is a critical piece, remember, of the DevOps equation, right? We'll start to do things like dynamic discovery of infrastructure and, you know, YAML descriptions of configuration, blue-green zero downtime deployment. This is super cool, right? So instead of having that delivery pipeline, you know, kind of the pre-DevOps where, you know, you're bringing your code from dev to test to staging to production, and then when you flip the switch in production and you hope it works, right? What blue-green does is it, you know, as it moves down the deployment pipeline, it creates new infrastructure side by side with the old infrastructure, puts it behind a load balancer, right? And that's why it's called blue-green. So one's blue, one's green, right? And then you start to slowly put traffic onto the new infrastructure, and you monitor it, and you watch it. And when you're comfortable that it will take the traffic, that your changes are good, then you just shut down the old infrastructure, right? And so this is a very common technique in kind of modern companies like, you know, particularly consumer companies like Facebook, Twitter, and so on and so forth. And we believe that, you know, kind of that traditional release management is going to actually blend with the cloud native stuff. So, you know, like I said earlier, this very rich and innovative developer experience, we don't want to throw that away. We actually want to embrace that, and then we want to bring a back end into play so that the operations guys get everything that they need. And then, you know, companies like Atomic and others will orchestrate across the top in order to, you know, kind of keep those pipelines going. And then there it is, the Global Federated Application Execution Fabric, right? So you should write that one down, I think. Nobody's writing anything. We'll see if that one catches on. But this idea that, you know, cloud is not a place, cloud is a model, is going to, you know, start to become more and more important over time. Rise of the robots, what the heck is he talking about, right? So in the 2 to 5 year time frame, right, we are going to start to see heuristically driven, algorithmically driven automation become more and more important, right? So it changes everything, right? So, you know, today if you take a look at workflow definitions, they tend to be very defined, right? So it's awesome, you know, in a DevOps system, we can actually define our workflows, we can define what happens when problems exist, we can have loops, we can have conditional branches, we can model very complex workflows, but we do model them a priori, beforehand. And if things change in the environment, then we go in and we have to change our workflows. So what this is really saying is that in the future, there will be intelligence that will take the humans out of that equation, right? So as we're collecting data about our environments, whether they be physical servers, virtual servers, or containers, or groups of containers, or groups of data centers, as that information is all being collected and analyzed, the system will be able to make intelligent decisions on its own, right? So the actual system as a whole is non-deterministic from a human being standpoint. Human beings cannot keep all of this in their head, and that's why we have computers, right? And really, IoT, right? Internet of Things. It's one of those, kind of hot buzzwords, like big data. So Internet of Things becomes the Internet of everything, right? Because anything that can be instrumented and send data back, it can be, kind of the classic IoT sensors, right? Our RFID, or, that sort of thing. It can also be your computers. It can be your infrastructure. It can be your HR system. Anything will be able to send data into the system, which then can be evaluated by the automation and rules engines. So, and now we've gotten to the point where we're going to actually let you ask questions.
Those questions are sent before the presentation. I would like to know the order of those questions. We will go through the list. First, raise your hand if you are to take go. No one?
From my company.
Okay.
Oh, he missed giving the book. We have a book for everybody who asked the questions, so we could give out 3 books.
We already give.
Oh, you already did?
Yeah,
Okay,
we have someone on the background.
Okay. Great.
Okay, so even he's not here, but
I read his question?
you
Okay.
are willing to answer, John?
Kong. Okay, what type of company is suitable to implement DevOps? I think this was asked in a different way earlier. I think any company can benefit from DevOps. So just to recap, DevOps is a philosophy for how to get the development organization working better with the operational team and making that handoff from development to production more reliable, more consistent. Application release automation is a specific tool that can play a role, and the role is to be able to continuously release software to production, continuous delivery, right? So 3 different terms. Your company might benefit from DevOps as a principle. They may not be big enough to take advantage of an ARA tool just yet, but maybe they're getting there. But continuous delivery is a way for you to deliver more value to the business, to be more agile. Somebody asked a question earlier. It was around why automation, and it was asked in a way that made me think you were talking about saving people. Most of our customers, most of the people who come to us aren't interested in cost savings. They're interested in moving faster, quicker, more reliably with less problems and errors. So I don't want anyone in the room tonight to feel threatened by automation. Automation is not a threat to you, right? But it's a way for your company to be more efficient, which frees up your time if you're working on these release to production, to work on things that matter more to your company. Find things that matter. Don't work on problems that can be automated. Be the leader for automation. Take that to your company. Bring your colleagues, do the automation, and show your company. And then you move up, get that DevOps title, make 30% more money. That's good. Okay, question 2. What are the opportunities for DevOps in Vietnam?
Bạn Nguyễn Hữu Hoa có đề Hoa.
Bạn có muốn giải thích thêm được không?
Oh, is this your question?
Hi everyone. My name is Hoa. I come from Samsung Electronics Vietnam. First of all, I want to thank for your informative presentation.
Thank you.
Today I bring to our workshop with this question is what are the opportunities for DevOps in Vietnam?
Right, so we looked at this question earlier, and we're trying to figure out exactly what you're asking, but I'll start the answer, and then maybe we can refine, what we have found is it's DevOps is really applicable to anybody who is developing, deploying software, right? Has data centers or uses cloud, right? That sounds like a lot of people because it's pretty much everybody. And we, globally, we found that it's not country specific, it's not region specific. It really is because it's a process and a set of tools to support the process. It can be used anywhere. So the opportunities here are the same as they are any place. Now, I think maybe you had a different question.
I'm very new members in DevOps field, so this is my only question today.
Okay,
Thank you.
did that answer your question? Okay, great. Perfect. Question lady.
So the third one, do we have a Vũ Minh Tâm from Wala here? No?
Uh-oh.
Vũ Minh Tâm. Có Tâm ở đây không? Không có. Okay, next.
So do you want to answer, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So this is an interesting one, and I actually was just going to hand the mic over to Todd, but this is really, as you can see, as we went through the presentation, depending upon what your role is in your organization, this question can be answered in a variety of different ways, right? Because DevOps is a process, it's a collaborative process. It kind of changes the culture within your company, right? So from a developer's perspective, the way to start doing this is to really advocate, right, with your IT folks and whomever, because developers are truly influencers, right? 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I started doing this, the developers didn't have a voice. Right now, developers are very influential. If you are a IT manager or a CIO or somebody who is trying to affect your overall contribution to the business, then you should start thinking about implementing this DevOps journey from the top down. And there are a variety of ways of doing that. There's a lot of good information on our website about how you can go through this journey, right? And it starts with, kind of assessing your organization, seeing, kind of where you're at in your current processes, and then, mapping a journey toward, kind of full DevOps. But depending upon, whether you're a developer, whether you're a manager, whether you're an executive, the answer to this question is a little bit different. You have anything to add to that?
The next one we have Jacob Vũ from
Skype.
Synergies.
Oh.
So, hello everyone. Hi John.
Hey, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation today. I have a question about my product. I see about you in your website, and I see you have a lot of experience in deploy OpenStack for ERP system. So my goals coming here today, I hope you can answer for me detail your experience when you deploy OpenStack for ERP. And of course, my question is common question, and I think it's enough time for answer. So I hope you can answer for me by email. Of course, by the way, you can answer a general your question for everyone.
Do you have a card? Business card?
Yeah. So
I'm gonna let Todd answer this one.
Well, so Jacob, first of all, that's an American name, huh? You're American.
Yeah, Jacob.
That's a very American name.
Yes.
It's easy for me to say.
Yeah.
I'm Todd.
Nice to meet you.
So I answer two parts to your question. So from a DevOps perspective and ARA, you can treat both in-house developed applications, like the things you develop for your companies and release, and then packaged applications, software that you buy from other vendors like SAP or Oracle or Hyperion. And you know that software delivery pipeline that John showed where the wheels were turning, right? If it's a packaged app, it just inserts later in the process, just right where your in-house developed apps would go through dev, test, sandbox, pre-prod, and then ready to release to production. You can do the same thing with packaged apps in that continuous delivery cycle. And we do this for Siebel systems, for SAP, for other packaged apps. So you can apply these DevOps principles, whether it's your application or software that you take releases from other vendors. To your specific question about Hyperion and ERP, we have a Hyperion integration into Oracle EBS. So we use automation around Oracle EBS to automate financial close process for companies. And a lot of companies use Hyperion together with Oracle EBS, and then they automate their financial close. General Electric is a very big customer of ours, and they automate all their financial close. It can take sometimes days to weeks, and it can take dozens to hundreds of people. We can automate that process to do in a couple days, a couple people. So that's the short answer, and we can get you more information about Hyperion specifically.
Yes, of course.
Yes, okay. Okay, perfect, okay. Is your company automated? What's your vision of automation in your company? Yang Tong from Sigma. Ah, okay.
Hello, Todd and John. Thank you very much for your very informative presentation. I just want to clarify more about my question here. So, you are selling the DevOps service and you're selling automation service, right? So I have been always wondering how are you applying yourself in your company? There's some funny story in Vietnam. Some people selling fruit don't eat fruit. So I'm wondering how is automation in your company? Maybe you have a system of ranking of automation in company, automation level A, B, C, D. How do you rank your company in terms of automation in company?
We love our fruit.
We eat fruit.
I know. Just kidding.
It's a good question. It's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. Maybe I'll take this one and you can take the last two. So we have a philosophy that says we automate everything that can be automated. No person should touch anything that can be automated by computers and by our software. That's number one. We also have a service offering, so getting back to Atomic specific, but you asked about Atomic specifically. We go out and consult with customers and teach them about DevOps. Whether they buy our software or not, I care, but I don't care. I want to evangelize DevOps. So we have consultants who will go out and show companies how to become agile and how to implement DevOps principles. And if they buy our software, that's great, but we want to educate the market as part of what we do. So we automate everything we can, and we teach, promote, evangelize automation. It's a religion for us almost, yeah?
We run our own software in-house, right? It's like we eat, I'll use your term, we eat our own fruit. And we actually, our development teams, right, they're on 2-week sprints, and as things come in at the end of sprints, they get automatically tested and deployed internally to our own IT systems. So I completely believe in that, and I wouldn't buy fruit from somebody who didn't eat fruit either.
And the next one, bạn Vũ Thị Vân Anh có đây.
Ah.
Alright, sorry, I think my question is kind of the same as my colleague here. He and I came from the same company. I got a bit misunderstood about DevOps. I thought it was automation test. Sorry. But then I'm thinking, I have another question. Do you think full automation test cases is essential for DevOps? I mean, without a full test suite, automation test suite, then DevOps would not be possible, because although you will be able to release very often, but then you will not be able to test
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So even before I got involved with DevOps, I was a big believer in test automation, right? And big believer in, for instance, right? So one of my projects in the past was helping to found OpenStack, right? Big open source project. I saw it on your agenda, so you guys probably know all about what that is. OpenStack has contributors from 42 countries, every time zone. Code comes in at any time. Something like that would not be possible without test automation, right? So we require unit tests to come along with code, right? So we don't let anything hit trunk that doesn't have tests. We don't let anything hit trunk that actually hasn't gone through what we call the gate, right? And the gate is test the code before it actually gets checked in, which I'm a huge believer in. That's kind of opposite to kind of the common thinking. But yes, can you start down your journey, your DevOps journey, without all of this in place? Absolutely, right? Remember, it's a collaborative community cultural change first, and it's tooling and processes second. So if the only thing you did was you figured out some way to get your dev teams and your operations teams to talk with each other on a regular basis and be honest, that's a big step. And then bringing in Selenium and all, test runners and things like that. Yeah, I think that, ultimately you have to do that, and that's probably even more important than some of the continuous integration pieces for, code maintenance.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sure.
And the last one will be Tuấn.
Just to finish this question, we've actually discussed that term DevOps and felt like it should be called DevTestOps. It would be more representative. Okay, study cases for automation business, success cases in the fact.
I'm home. I'm not a developer, so I want so much your book with your sign. So I have questions for you. How do you feel about the Hanoi developer community, and how do you feel about the Vietnam market for the automatic market, and how do you feel about the Hanoi weather now?
Oh, well, I live in Vienna and I live in Seattle, Washington, and both are cloudy and gray.
Yes.
And much colder than Hanoi, so this is nice. It's warm. Yeah. So in reverse order, so the developer community is the engine behind this DevOps movement, and it came out of, even though it talks about how to combine developers with operational team, the push behind it has been from the developers. It's been very strongly a developer-driven philosophy. And I think that's good. Someone needs to take the lead. I think over time it starts to balance a little bit more, and more operational guys come into the picture from the ops side. Because, the chart earlier about digital transformation, it talked about agility and reliability. If all you have is developers releasing code very rapidly, you're very agile. Who is guaranteeing that it's also a very reliable environment? And I think about, writing software. It's not so hard to write software that works. It's really hard to write software that doesn't break, and to put it into an operational environment that doesn't break the software. So the operations side of this equation, I think, over the next few years starts to be in balance with development, as it should be. it's in balance. No one side is stronger than the other. It's a balance. So this is my view, but you're the developer. So.
Yeah. The DevOps thing really came from the open source world, right? So very developer oriented. The communities around, Linux and, other big open source projects have kind of figured this out because they had to, right? And so what we're seeing now is we're seeing, kind of the evolution of DevOps into enterprise software, enterprise data centers, and so on and so forth. But for years, this has been the open source method for creating software because they had to do it in a fully distributed way across multiple time zones, 24 hours a day.
Thank you very much.
And to your last point about the opportunity in Vietnam for DevOps. So I think by geography, you see different regions adopting DevOps more aggressively than others. I think that all geographies are starting to embrace DevOps, and we see that. We do quite a bit of business in Asia Pacific market, and even within Asia Pacific, as well as Europe, US, all embracing DevOps. As a developer community, if you're a technologist, and this is interesting to you, you're in a fantastic place to do this. We have, in the past, and John has run big engineering teams, I've had up to 3,000 person engineering teams under me. We've had teams running in Bangalore, and I can tell you that this team that we have right here in Vietnam is one of the best I've ever worked with. Very top caliber, very top notch. And if I have the chance to grow software development further, we will do it, and we'll do it here because of the quality, the caliber, the loyalty of the team, the dedication of the team. It's a phenomenal environment. And you all should feel very proud of what this small atomic team has accomplished, because I know you're doing the same thing in your companies and for your companies. And that's a phenomenal place to draw attention from the world to what you're doing right here in your own development community. So don't stop, keep going. Okay.
Okay, my name is Kong. I come from an IT company. I'm going to ask this specific question because it tried 2 years to implement test-driven development and it failed. So my specific question here is, how did you transform the team into DevOps, including the startup company and the team here in Vietnam? And what were the most critical things that you transformed? Very specific, not general.
Okay, yeah, so I talked about AppFog, which was a startup that I was a CTO on. We started off with DevOps, right? So we had that built in. We hired people that understood it. So I think that was the easier answer. For Atomic itself is actually, 25 years old, right? So Atomic as a company has been in business for a long time. It's gone through the variety of different, development methodologies, from client server to virtualization to Agile, and then starting about 2 years ago, before my time, that's why I keep looking at Todd, we embarked on a huge journey to go from a very traditional software development team and group of developers in Europe to become more agile, to become more global, right? So we have developers all over the world right now in different time zones, including Vietnam and Austria, US, etc. But it took about a year for our engineering team to actually implement the agile processes that were necessary, to get the tooling in place that would make our own continuous delivery pipeline work, and to get it implemented across the company. So you're talking about eating our own fruit, right? It really took us about a year to get all of our engineering and our operations and our support teams on board and fully automated to the point we are today.
your engineering manager, or your leader, I think, is what I'm sensing, yeah?
Yeah. The CEO of the company.
Yes, okay. So I asked this question when I joined, and Benedict can comment maybe because he was there, because I saw the team transform very quickly. And I asked people in the team about that transformation, and they were very excited about it and very happy to have been part of it. And I asked our engineering leader, how did you get them to want to make this change? And he said, I told them where we were going, and I asked their help to figure out how to get there. Right? So you said we're going on a journey, right? It's one thing to say we're going on a journey, and it's another thing to say, get in the car now, rather than say, we're going on this journey, how should we get there? I want your opinion. And he included the team, and the team together implemented Agile.
And that really, the last part of your question, where you said, you know, what was the most difficult part? It is getting buy-in, right? It's getting people to accept they are going on a journey as a team, as a group, and it's not business as usual. It's not, our, you know, developers sit over here and operation guys sit over there, and we never talk. We just send tickets back and forth, right? So, you know, getting the team to buy into the process is really the first thing that you have to do. And then, like, you know, like Todd said, if you can make it very collaborative, then you've got, you know, the whole team on your side.
But I think it's that leadership, and all the companies that are successful with this starts with very strong leadership who's very clear on where the company's going, right? So it's not a question, you know, would you like to go on this journey? We're going on this journey now. Please be part of the process to get there. So we work with a very large company. It's the largest company in the world. It's Walmart. And Walmart uses our software to automate different things. And the leader works for the CIO. He set his whole development organization up on Agile transformation. And Walmart's a very old, traditional retail store company, but they're becoming a very digital company. But they set that leadership from the top saying, this is where we're going. And it has a company culture of saying we constantly reinvent. Our DNA, our makeup is to constantly reinvent ourselves. So strong leadership, culture, and then buy-in from people, and magic can happen. And what else? Yeah, I think that was all the questions on there. What else do you have? Yeah. Oh. Right there.
My name is Quân.
Hey, Quân.
I'm working from home as a half of DevOps. But I think that I just focus on the technical thing. By technical thing, I mean that the second and the third one, it is automation and measurement. So could you please talking about the more detail about the first and the last one? It is culture and sharing. And how did you apply it in your company?
Okay, I think, let me repeat, see if I got right. The first question was around specific detail around...
the first pillar and the last pillar.
Yeah.
I mean the...
Oh, the pillars.
Yes. In the first slide.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. I'm working from home, and I only focus on the technical thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is the second and the third automation and measurement.
Okay.
So could you please?
But my colleague John.
Okay, so first, I think the question was about measurement.
But the question is about the first and the last one.
About culture and sharing. And you said that you work from home?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, forget it. No. Scrum. Yeah, that's right. If you are not all sitting in the same room, just forget it. No. I'm a huge believer in remote workers, and we have all the tooling, right? So things, you know, depending upon the processes that you guys use in terms of your stand-ups, your communication and such. We used, at AppFog, we used IRC initially, and then we went to HipChat. So we were continuously in conversations because we had folks that were very geographically spread out, right? Actually, in Portland, Oregon, which was the headquarters of the company, there was only 5 developers, right? So 5 of the 20. So the rest of them were, 3 time zones away, 2 time zones away, or whatever. And we were very successful in including folks in building the culture, building a collaborative sharing culture, implementing agile techniques, stand-ups and all that good stuff, coordination of sprints through online tools, right? And today we live in a time where it's very easy to do that, and and I think that allowing folks to not have to be physically co-located is actually an advantage, right? I like it.
Câu hỏi tiếp theo bạn bên này nhé.
I just say while he's asking, so we were in the office, Hanoi office of Atomic today, in a conference room working, and I looked in the other room through the glass, and there's a big video conferencing system, and there's the room in Vienna, and I said, hey, I know that guy. And it's so nice with video because it makes it personal in a way. You can see the face, you can see the smile, you communicate so much more than just talking. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Duane.
Nice to meet you.
I have a question for you. So what's the difference between DevOps and continuous delivery? And can you recommend some best tools for DevOps?
So one thing that should be clear from everything that we've talked about is DevOps is not tools, right? So you don't go down to the corner store, buy a tool and say, I'm a DevOps guy. DevOps is really about culture and process, right? And policies.
Yeah, I mean some tools using about
Yes.
in DevOps.
Yeah, so continuous delivery can be facilitated using tools, right? And I would suggest you go and buy everything from Atomic, right? If you take a look at things like continuous integration servers, testing, automated testing platforms, there's a lot of open source stuff. I'm a big open source guy, so forgive me, but yeah, so you can build a continuous delivery pipeline using all open source, and it's pretty good stuff. It depends on the sophistication of your organization, how how much experience you guys have in building your own pipelines, workflow tools, and things like that. Going with a commercial vendor, whether it's Atomic or somebody else, gets you dashboards. It gets you kind of that the measurement piece of it, the metrics, and those sorts of things. So there's value, I believe, or else I wouldn't be doing this in the commercial aspects of continuous delivery tooling to make DevOps transformations work. But certainly, to dip your toe in, use some of the open source tools, right? And if you go to the various DevOps conversations that are out on the net, a lot of them will talk about here's how you can build a chain of tools that do things like continuous integration, continuous provisioning, continuous deployment. For the Docker guys, there's a whole series of little companies that are popping up, building CI tools and automated testing tools and orchestrators like Kubernetes or Mesos. So there's a lot of stuff out there. Now, once you get your head wrapped around, as Todd said, where you want to go, then you can actually plot your own journey. And then as your company grows and becomes kind of more tuned toward we need to know kind of at an executive level where things are in the release processes and what our metrics are from the support team, or we need to tie this together with our customer relations management system. Then you can start looking at tools like Atomic.
There's a good how to start and go next and go next on the web. It's a company we work with called Task, T-A-S-C.
TASC. John mentioned them. But if you say TASC and Atomic, I think you'll get this video on YouTube. I think it's on our website. But it's a very pragmatic approach to how he started. He took what was the sandbox developer environment, and then he took that into production. He used orchestration to begin. Then he added application release automation tool. Then he integrated that with Jenkins. Then he used Docker to deliver microservices. And he's very stepwise pragmatic. So you can look at that. It's almost a good blueprint for how to start small, add pieces. And it talked about some of the tools and why they were good and where there were limitations, why there were limitations. So, yeah, and DevOps to me is a lot like, it's different, but it's the same idea of many years ago, right? We had ITIL as a framework for IT. ITIL didn't tell you which tools specifically, but it spawned a whole industry of tools, CMDBs and service desks that all fit that service or that ITIL service delivery framework. You'll see the same thing, I think, in DevOps space, that Gartner has some, I think it's an infinite loop of tools in the infinite loop, and you can start to see which tools for which piece of the DevOps continuous delivery cycle might be appropriate. I don't think that's public yet, but Gartner, if your company subscribes to Gartner, very soon Gartner will be publishing something that has a nice vendor mapping in all of the functional areas. Really, I think it's good.
Okay, thank you for your answer. We have about 20 minutes left, so we have to
talk fast.
Talk fast. Yes, 2 minutes. 2 minutes time for question and answer. Okay. Hello. Next.
He has the microphone. I'm sorry. If you like, we can stay here when we're done, and we can still talk. It's okay.
Yeah, I have seen a lot of specific requirement for some DevOps guys, and in my company we develop that we use DevOps, but we need to use a combination of senior developer and senior administrator operator. So for you, I think it's very difficult to find a combination of a good guy, of developer guy and administrator guy. So what is this for you? Is recommended way to build a DevOps guy?
It's easy for us because we just find great software developers.
Great software developer.
Yeah, but in this case, I think, in each company, typically there's somebody somewhere who's made that transition from the development team over to operations. And usually it's because they've been frustrated as a developer trying to get stuff into production and seeing it break and break and break. And out of frustration, they say, I'm a smart developer, I'm gonna go show those ops guys how to do this. And then they get there and they figure out it's a lot harder than they thought. And so what developed out of that's a little bit of a mutual respect for each world. But you're not gonna transition an army of people overnight, but you have those people who sit at the edges who have an interest in both sides of the problem. And those are the people, I think, who make the best DevOps candidates because they understand it's about the integration of those two organizations that will help you be successful if you're going to embrace DevOps. I don't know if there's another pattern that you've seen for what produces good DevOps guys.
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is, you don't have to find it all in one person, right? So you don't have to find the guy who's the DevOps guy, right? Because then you're really kind of perpetuating the old silos, right? What you want to do is you want the operations team to be moving toward the developers to be moving towards that. And I'll give you a little story about that. Before I'd ever even heard the term DevOps, I was running the engineering team at the Rackspace public cloud, and we needed to build an object storage system, right? So, we had a compute infrastructure, we had the networks, we had the platform. We didn't have a storage system that was equivalent to like Amazon's S3. So I personally ran the development team. Okay, I'll be very fast on this one. I ran the development team that actually implemented the object storage system, that's in OpenStack today, so you can go out and look at Swift and see the code. But we very deliberately involved the operations guys, the network guys, the data center guys, the guys that had to like read the drives and all that good stuff. It was actually a singular team that we pulled together, and it was very successful. And that's what actually clicked over in my head. This is the right way to run development to deployment teams. And it just so happened that later on I found out it had a name, so DevOps.
Thank you. Ok, bởi vì thời gian cũng còn nhiều, mình còn khoảng 10 đến 15 phút nữa, sau đấy cuối cùng là trò quay sổ số. Thì các bạn nào câu hỏi tiếp nào? Nhiều quá.
My name is Quang. I'm from Vietnam. John says that holistic automation has changed the game of intelligent automation.
Yes.
Right. So this automate start any projects to bring this future to reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You want me to talk about that? Hey, I'll stay here the rest of the night talking about this. So, yes, we are as a company committed to this, right? We see this as our future, right? So as we move, and we're not going to abandon our release automation, our workload automation, our DevOps practice, the consulting that Todd talked about, but we are going to start adding in elements of this. And the heuristic automation piece is super cool because it implements a set of AI, right, that has been expressed as expert systems. We're now starting to talk about deep learning algorithms. Right, and so we're not in this to do it as a research project. We're in it to do, as Todd would say, applied research and bring it to market. So we have a specific set of use cases that we're going to use, and I think that we will, like a lot of you, we'll bring things in a little bit at a time. We'll learn as we go because this is a field that is not well known or defined, but there's a lot of real interest in it. And when you see things like the Netflix recommendation engine or the Amazon.com recommendation engine or Google itself, you can see the power of using algorithms and heuristics to make decisions. And for instance, IBM, right, has their engine, Watson, you've probably heard of. So that it's very similar to that, and we will be implementing this over time in our platform, right, as a consultant to what do I do next in this workflow. So it's very cool stuff, love it.
Thank you. Hello, I am here from ITLCHN18 Group, a company with 800 million revenue. Frankly, there's no automation at all in our company because we are stuck at some very big software or design software. In our vision, automation is something we must adopt in very near future. So my question is, do you have any business in Vietnam? So we need, so we can reach it when we need.
I think this is a lead.
Let's see. 800 million dong or dollars?
Dollars.
Dollars! Okay, I give you my business card and we... yeah, no, our Asian headquarters actually is based in Hong Kong, so very close. And I think we can talk afterwards if you'd like to come talk. Let's talk specifically. But what I'd say for your company that hasn't started on any automation journey yet, usually the way people start is they have a problem. There's some business problem or an IT problem that's really painful. And the guys will say, gosh, if only we could fix this problem, if only we could make this go faster, or only we could make this more reliable. There's a handful of 3, 4, 5 problems that your company has.
in that set, one of those will be your best starting place for automation. Because what happens is you automate fixing that problem, and it had such high visibility in the company, everybody goes, wow. And then people start to think, well, if I could do that, I could fix this, I could fix that, I could fix that. And it grows like a weed. It's almost just amazing to watch. And it happens company after company. But it starts with, we would sit with you at a whiteboard, we would ask a lot of questions, you would tell us what pain points you have, and we would together decide that could be the best place to start. And you can start small. You don't have to start with big project. And we would say start with small project and do it really, really well, because then a success encourages the next success, and they grow. We talk afterwards, and I can give your specifics and connect someone with you. Thank you.
So I would just add one thing, a more general piece to that. A lot of folks that we find that are ripe for automation have runbooks, or they have Excel spreadsheets with like 30 steps to do things. They've got scripts, right? That, you know, script after script after script. These are the sorts of things that once you define the process and the workflow that you need to do, then bringing in a tool like Atomic or other kind of release automation or workflow automation tools makes a lot of sense, right? And as Todd said, the start of the journey is actually identifying those processes that we can then automate.
Hello, and thank you for coming and sharing with us today. I have a quick question for you. If we are a small team with limited resource and effort, but now we all know that we always want to go quick and go big, but we don't want to fail across. Do you think that we should spend effort on building DevOps operation, or just a continuous delivery pipeline on our production as the beginning of a project, or we should wait when we are big enough for implement the same thing on our process?
Yeah, if I understand the question, you don't have to wait, right? So starting earlier is better, right? So, you know, if you start at the beginning of a project and you actually design the processes, and you have the people on the teams assigned to roles that facilitate that, you will find tremendous efficiencies, as I kind of indicated with my startup experience. We had not a lot of people, and we had a lot of software change. We had a lot of releases that went on every single day, and we had to do it reliably. Otherwise, we wouldn't eat. So, I would say you absolutely don't have to wait until you're bigger. What you do have to do is you have to get your team bought in, as we talked about earlier, right? So if you can evangelize, this is the journey, this is where we want to go. Let's start it on this project or that project, and build on success. Then I think that you'll see that your company will be A, impressed, and B, will start to adopt it at a larger scale.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe then you can get more resources.
Yeah, I think even in small companies, a lot of times people think of process as slowing them down, making them not as agile. And process actually, I think, frees you up to go faster, because you get a more predictable outcome every time.
Yep.
You're not doing rework, you're not dealing with the issues and the problems. So, but John's absolutely right. Unless you have a codified or a written process, you can't automate it. You can't automate what's in somebody's head. So at least having a process, following a process, writing a process down is that starting point, is being able to then automate.
Thời gian cho một câu hỏi cuối cùng nhé. Xin lỗi, bạn này giơ tay trước thì mình sẽ...
Everybody wants a book.
Hi, Toast and Jones. I'm fine, an IT leader from an investment bank in Vietnam.
Okay, that's why the tide, I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay. So actually, I have two questions for you about how to implement the DevOps in a big organizations. The first one, last year, I have a project. Actually, it's my idea to build a new DevOps system and the continuous integrations in our big bank, actually a big bank. So the challenge is after a few months, we prepare and test everything okay on our staging and UAT. When we go to production, the security guys say no, because you allow one server, one big server to accept all the server in your organization. So it's like you have a backdoor. Then you have the risk, very high risk that somebody can hack your system. So what is your advice? So the second question is, if you want to implement suppose like the DevOps or the CI in suppose like for the legacy banks or the big organizations, what is the most important factor to make it success?
So a few questions, and maybe I'll let you talk about the promoting from pre-prod to prod and the security guy topic, and I'll take the other two. So we work with banks. We just actually closed Barclays Cards last quarter, and we're about to close Nomura Bank. And so if you like, we could afterwards trade cards, and I could give you specific, connect you with contacts at these banks, because we've done this for banks. I'd say the same principles apply, that you have to have the whole organization bought in to this agile transformation and DevOps. And that includes the guys on the back end who you say you're blocking you from a security perspective. They're not bought in. They're not part of the transformation. And so, that's, based on what you're saying, that seems like that's a cultural, organizational issue. And maybe you could speak more specifically if you ever run into this with security guys. And then you got past the security part.
I didn't get past security. But, so describe a little bit more about what the security guys were telling you.
Actually, it's like if you want to implement the automatic deployments,
yes.
You allow one server to copy all the files to your servers, and nobody knows, what is inside.
Okay.
So that is the things.
Yeah.
Like if they intend to put some like unallowed files or dangerous files inside.
Yeah.
So what happened? So
Yeah. So we had a very similar issue with a large financial services company, right? And what we had to do there was we actually had to segment our networks, right? So the idea is that the staging server, which is what you're talking about, had to be on its own isolated network segment with traffic being monitored, all the way around. And what's interesting is with software-defined networking today, it's very easy to set that topology up, right, and have it under programmatic control, right? So, yeah. So the idea that the security guys can say, well, no, this is a point of vulnerability. Of course, you're not poking holes in your firewalls, right? You're not putting any IP addresses out that are publicly available, right? But in your continuous deployment process, being able to isolate your dev test environments from your staging environments, from your production environments is very key. And it's all about the network topologies at that point. And as a matter of fact, with Fidelity, we actually had to...
Ở đây có những bạn nào mà đã quen thuộc với lĩnh vực DevOps rồi nhỉ? Có bạn nào? Có vẻ như là có khoảng 10% hoặc 20%, đúng không? Các bạn có thể giơ tay cao lên một chút. Ok. Như vậy là chúng ta có khoảng 10-20% là các bạn đã biết về thuật ngữ DevOps. Mình muốn có cái thông tin như thế này thì các bác speaker sẽ biết được là mức độ các bạn hiểu biết về cái công nghệ như thế nào thì sẽ adapt về cách mà các bạn nói một chút. Mình hỏi một chút là ở đây thì các bạn sẽ có bao nhiêu người là developers? Chỉ 90% là developers đúng không? Wow. Bài nói chuyện hôm nay thì phần đầu tiên, 10 phút đầu tiên sẽ là CEO nói chuyện về Automate. Automic là ai và như thế nào. Và trước khi mà CEO đi vào cái phần này trong khoảng 10 đến 12 phút thôi, thì mình muốn hỏi là ở đây bao nhiêu bạn đã từng nghe đến Automic? Mà không tính đội quân của Automic bên này. Như vậy là các bạn cũng chưa có nhiều người biết nắm về Automic. Thì ở đây sẽ là một cơ hội để các bạn biết là Automic là công ty như thế nào và đã các bác này sẽ không nói rõ về văn phòng Automic Việt Nam, nhưng mà sau đấy nếu mà các bạn muốn tìm hiểu thêm về văn phòng Automic Việt Nam thì các bạn sẽ có một số liên hệ và bên mình chắc chắn là sẽ trả lời tất cả câu hỏi của các bạn. Có một điều lưu ý là sắp tới tất nhiên là các bác ấy sẽ không thể nói bằng tiếng Việt, sẽ phải dùng tiếng Anh, và tiếng Anh của các bác ấy là native nên chắc chắn là nó sẽ hơi khó nghe một chút, thì mình sẽ cố gắng là có những cái phần ramp up in the middle ở giữa để các bạn có thể nắm bắt được cái bài nói chuyện của hai bác. So I will introduce Doc Dilafter, our CEO of Automic, and he will give introduction about Automic and what business that we are doing. So can you please welcome him?
Oh, thank you. I have a...
Did
you ask a question about the operations and developers already?
I'm asking about, so we have around 10% of people in the DevOps and 80% of people developers.
Okay. Is this on? This little mic. Test.
Can you do something?
Yes, test. Test.
It's just for recorder. So you need to use this
okay.
one.
It's never a software problem, it's always a hardware problem. Always. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm very honored to be with you this evening. My name is Todd DeLauder. I'm the CEO for Atomic Software, and my colleague John Purrier, who I'll introduce to you later also, is our Chief Technology Officer, or CTO. What I was asked to do tonight, because I'm the CEO, is to talk for a very small amount of time because tonight is about technology and DevOps and you and your businesses and your careers. So I'll spend a little bit of time just telling you who Atomic is, a little bit of time talking about the market, because I think the market and what customers need automation for is a very important part of the equation. You have to have a business need to be able to do anything in software or in engineering. So I'll touch on that a little bit. By background, I am an electrical engineer by background. I was a software developer for many years, but then I became a CEO and I can no longer write code. So don't ask me anything about writing code. So let's talk about Atomic a little bit. So Atomic does automation, and we do automation of business process and the IT applications and systems that those business processes run on. So any of you know a company called eBay by name? It's a big auction company in the US. They sell things online. Atomic automates all of the auction process under eBay. Netflix, a video on demand company. Atomic automates all of the data orchestration behind Netflix data scientists. So when they ask you, you've watched these last 5 things, we think you might like these things, and they offer you a choice, that's based on data analytics that Atomic is orchestrating. So you get the idea, it's business processes where IT systems and applications depend. We're about 650 people globally. We have large development centers in Seattle, Washington, Paris, France, Vienna, Austria, and right here in Hanoi. All of the product that John will talk about in our DevOps area is developed here in Hanoi by a very outstanding team of elite software developers. I think several of them are here tonight. This is the only place we do our DevOps development, and it's right here in Hanoi.
So Atomic, you don't know us by name, but we're behind the scenes of many companies. And what I thought would be interesting is very quickly just walk you through what that looks like. So you wake up in the morning and maybe you put on your slippers from a company called Payless. Oh no, you have Nike shoes. You put those on instead. These are all customers. Carphone Warehouse, Fossil, Barnes & Noble's books, TUI, eBay, Walmart, right? Big customer of ours. Okay, you get out of the bedroom into the kitchen. Oh, you recognize that logo? Yeah? Okay, cranberry juice, ice cream, soda, toasters, cabinets, electronics, electricity, water. We automate all of those processes for those companies as well. Out of the kitchen, you got to go somewhere. Oh, you take a boat. Atomic. Maybe you came here tonight by train. Most likely scooter, but maybe train. Cars. We automate Toyota, Porsche, BMW, Fiat, Mercedes. Airlines. I don't think many of you flew here tonight, but maybe if you did, maybe you took one more. There it is. Vietnam Airways, yeah. Also a customer. Banks. We have about 650 banks as customers all over the globe. We did some math just as a fun exercise to imagine how many people we affected with our automation software. And across all of these, food, we've got the food. Across all of these businesses, it's about 2,600 businesses. We estimated about close to 1 million employees in those businesses. And we projected almost 1 billion end customers. 1 billion people in the world are affected directly or indirectly by Atomic software. So you don't see us, you don't hear about us, but we're behind the scenes making these companies work. It's a very fun business to be in. Okay, so let's talk about why the business matters. You see this term a lot, digital transformation. And some companies start off digital, right? Gartner refers to them as Mode 2 companies. They're digital natives. Like many of you, you grew up not knowing a time when there wasn't a mobile phone or there wasn't even a web interface, right? Digital native companies, but there are a lot of companies that are what's called, Gartner calls Mode 1. They're more traditional companies, maybe stores, but they want to become more like the startup digital native companies. So they have to do a digital transformation, take their old business and make it become like a new business. That involves software, it involves applications, it involves automation, and it's great for all of us because they're fun projects, great careers, and good businesses there. Part of the problem, though, in that digital transformation is that companies want to become more agile, so they want to move quicker. The problem is, how do you do that in a way that you're still reliable? You can't just roll out software changes without test, verify, test in pre-production environments, safety checks. You have to be reliable. So the whole question for all of us as we think about this DevOps world is how to be agile while at the same time being reliable and predictable. That's the tension. It's push and it's pull on those 2 points. But if you can master that balance just right, you can help with the digital transformation. So why are companies pushing to automate? What's the driver behind it? It's because the kind of things they try to do are increasingly complex. Companies are buying other companies, they're merging, they're consolidating, they're outsourcing. They're doing things that mean you have to constantly bring IT systems in, pull them out, push one way, push another. It's difficult to do that all manually without breaking things. Automation is a way that you can solve this. Used to be simple because you'd have a business. That business would put up a firewall, they'd have a mainframe, and then it got complicated. We started adding things outside of the business. Outside companies, outside service providers, they needed to communicate inside into the firewall. It got more complicated. Then we started adding things above, cloud services, Amazon, Salesforce.com, and you can see the complexity that starts to grow. And the issue is that when all of these things work well, it's beautiful. You have business processes that run on applications, that run on infrastructure, and when it works well, it's fine. But it doesn't always work well because it's so complex and things break. And when they break, everybody knows about it immediately, and it's a bad problem for companies. So companies trying to go through this digital transformation also are very image aware, and they don't want to have problems that would become public embarrassments. Maybe I'll walk closer to the machine. There we go. And so this happens regularly where businesses roll out software updates or make changes and they break their business. Most recently was Twitter. Twitter went down when they rolled out a software update. On July 8th, 3 major corporations, New York Stock Exchange, Wall Street Journal, United Airlines, all stopped doing business because of software updates they rolled out that failed. This is my personal favorite, Starbucks coffee. I love coffee. On this day, Starbucks rolled out software change that broke their ability at the point of sale terminal to charge for a transaction and take money. So for one full day in the United States, Starbucks had to give away free coffee. That's embarrassing. Yeah? All because of software updates that went wrong. So this whole topic we're going to talk about tonight, DevOps, the process of how you connect development to operations, how you do it predictably and reliably, is important, not just from a technical engineering standpoint, but from a business continuity standpoint. At Atomic, we deliver 3 levels of automation: classic workload automation, service orchestration, and then application release automation, which is our topic for tonight. We're broader as a company, but tonight we're going to focus on that release automation topic. So I promise for the rest of the night, you won't hear Atomic by name. It'll just be about you, about DevOps, and about technology, okay? Thank you very much. With that, I'd like to introduce John Puryear, and John will talk to you about DevOps and how we do it and how we think about it. And a mic you so they can record it. Left, right, and then here. This is so they can
record for video later.
Yeah, for later. Got it?
Yeah. Automate đang xây dựng. CEO các bạn thông tin thêm về CEO các bạn có thể đến trang web của automate.com thì sẽ biết về lịch sử CEO của bên mình. Và bác ấy đã có 25 năm làm trong lĩnh vực công nghệ này và cũng là người khá nổi tiếng trên thế giới. CTO của bên mình là John Puryear và bác ấy sẽ tiếp tục nói về technology, và phần technology sẽ tập trung vào DevOps là gì, và làm thế nào để automate cái process ở trong DevOps. Đến phần cuối cùng thì bác ấy sẽ nói về vision, cái cách nhìn của bác ấy về automation trong tương lai. Đấy là cái 3 phần chính mà mình có thể để các bạn có thể follow. Sẽ có phần Q&A. Một số câu hỏi đã xem cho bên tổ chức trước đó thì bên mình sẽ show tất cả các câu hỏi trước đó, và sau khi đã trả lời tất cả các câu hỏi đó thì bên các bạn vẫn hoàn toàn có thể đặt câu hỏi ngay trong hội trường này, rồi bên mình sẽ trả lời mỗi một câu hỏi. Các bạn thì sẽ nhận một cuốn sách, trong đó có chữ ký của hai bác. Tất nhiên là chữ ký này cũng không bán được tiền nhiều đâu, nhưng mà đấy là quà kỷ niệm của Automic để cảm ơn các bạn đã tham gia sự kiện này.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for having me here and having Atomic here. Appreciate it. Excellent turnout, standing room only, love it. My name is John Purrier. I am the Chief Technology Officer of Atomic. And what I'd like to talk to you tonight is about DevOps, about continuous delivery, and then a little bit about automation and where we see the future of automation. So, I've been doing this for quite a while. If you looked at my background, you can see it goes back into the olden days. I started at IBM, but my second big job was at Microsoft. And I was at Microsoft for 14 years during the 1990s. And I ran the team that, and you'll either love me or hate me when I say this, that built Exchange Server. Thank you. So when we built Exchange Server, we were actually very cutting edge, we thought, right? So if you remember, a lot of you guys can't remember back that far, but if you remember how we built software, and particularly at Microsoft, one of the largest software companies in the world, we were on 1 year, 2 year, 3 year release cycles. My particular team took a lot of time and effort to really get our processes tight, and we were very proud of ourselves if we could get a build done each week and hand it off to test. So test would have an entire week to actually go through, and then we shrank our release cycle down to 12 months, right? So we were very happy with that. We had 12 people just on the build team that was making sure that changes that were checked in were correct, right? We ran through our build test and our smoke test, and we made sure that if somebody broke the build, that we called them in the middle of the night, and so some of you may have been on the other end of that phone call. But that was really state of the art for 1995. Recently, I was the CTO of a startup in Portland, Oregon, United States, called AppFog, and we were, a typical scrappy little startup, less than 50 people, but we were running a platform as a service company, and we, with less than 50 people, we had over 150,000 customers. They were running every single day over 100,000 applications. We ran them on 8 different public cloud instances, Amazon in a variety of places around the world, Hewlett-Packard, Rackspace, some other clouds as well. To run all of those applications, right, we had 4 operations guys. So less than half the guys that I had at Microsoft just doing builds were running this entire infrastructure. And the way that we did that was through automation and through a lot of the DevOps techniques that we'll talk about tonight. So what really triggered the switch? And you can see, it used to be we had silos, right? We had developers, and developers did their thing, and then they kicked it over to the QA guys, the testers. And the testers would do their thing, then they would kick it over to the pre-production guys, and then they would set up their staging environments, and when they were happy with that, they would give it to the production guys, right? And then the production guys would set it up, and if any time during this flow something didn't work, then the whole system just broke down. So we were seeing, kind of this weak coordination between our various disciplines, development and operations. And if you take a look at that level of specialization, that causes inefficiency because you're setting up environments over and over again that might or might not match. You know, have handoff problems as you move your products down the pipeline, right? And so your releases are slow, your utilization is low, and then, you know, we built software that was really big, right? So man, if you take a look at Windows, right? Millions of lines of code, and I can't even tell you the build and deployment issues that Microsoft had trying to build a version of Windows, but you can probably derive it from the fact that it took them 5 years to get Windows 7 out the door, right, and another 3 years to get Windows 10 out the door. So, and then the last point here is the process. Not having visibility into the process, and just having the chance that somebody somewhere along the line has forgot a file, somebody didn't check in a dependency, and it's all going to fall apart at some point in time. So, what is DevOps? Why do we do it? It's to solve those problems. It's to be agile, it's to get more velocity, and it's to build better, more reliable software. So, how many here are, somewhat familiar with DevOps? Okay, well, we got the perfect audience then, okay? So, DevOps really it's not just technology, right? So, I'm not going to stand up here and say, here's the thing that you buy and deploy it, and now you're a DevOps person, right? So, DevOps really is a cultural shift, a change in how companies build, validate, and deploy software. And one of the things that has to change is you need a much more collaborative environment where your developers actually talk to your operators, right? Your production guys talk to the guys that are actually building and validating the code. You do have to trust automation. Automation is a tool that lets you do more with less, right? And the cool thing about it is not only do you do more, you do it more reliably, because with automation you basically do the same thing over and over and over again, and what I like to say is we let the computers do what computers are good at, right? So why should you have a human being like running scripts or pushing buttons or whatever they have to do, copying files, when a computer can do that over and over and over again, 24/7, and do the same thing every time. If you don't measure your process, right, you'll never know how good it is. And one of the things that is really very cool about DevOps is the more you measure, the more you can optimize. The more you optimize, the more value you get out of the process, the more data that you get fed back. And so there's a really nice virtuous cycle that goes on with the measurement and the ongoing mediation of the process, right? And like I said, it really fosters a collaborative environment across all of your technical people, right? There's value in the fact that your CIO or your managers can see, here's the velocity of software that we're building, here's the number of defects that are going down, but it also makes it more fun to actually build software, because you can deploy not just once a week or once a year, but you can deploy many times a day. In the previous example that I used of AppFog, we had approximately 15 developers in the company, and we were doing 8 deploys a day across 8 different public cloud infrastructures. And we did this every single day, right? So, to kind of reiterate, problems are addressed in a timely manner. One of the things I do want to point out is that if I go back, notice that these are in squares, right, that are chasing themselves. as opposed to the old way of, kind of development, through to production, DevOps encourages iterative development and iterative delivery and iterative deployment. So as things kind of move down the deployment pipeline, there are iterations that are going on inside, each of the stages, whether it's development, unit testing, QA, system testing, or deployment, environment creation and deployment, right? So we can tell very quickly if there's any place in the process that isn't working correctly, right? And because, we're iteratively working on this, it gets fixed very fast. As opposed to, wow, I've got it, all the way down into system testing and it broke, I got to go all the way back and do another build, right? I can do this very iteratively and very quickly, right? So that's okay.
So you have a big understanding about web opportunities and extra anything to share or the question? Ai có câu hỏi là chia sẻ thì cho nó buổi này vui hơn một chút không?
Asking for questions?
Maybe they want to make the environment is more creative.
Okay.
Hi, John. Just about that, you when you go to the process of business, you can see that which have problem, right? So there's a lot of business in the world, right? So there are kind of business models on how you can, address the very best and the exact problem and how to solve it.
Yeah, so the question is, there's a lot of different kinds of businesses doing a lot of kind of software development, right? Yeah, so this describes a process that can be adapted to whatever environment that you're in, right? So if you are, let's say a software company, right? You're doing everything from, the idea of the software all the way through to how you deliver it to customers. Or if you're a bank, banks use a lot of big packaged products. You can bring those applications in, kind of what I would say midway through the process. So think about the company that's developing your software as doing the development part, right, and the QA part, and then giving it to you, and you now own the deployment piece and the update piece, right? So there's a lot of different ways to apply this. This is kind of a general, DevOps is really a general set of processes and techniques, and it's very adaptable.
Thank you for that.
Sure. Right. So as I said, right, we have changed how we build software, and you'll notice what's the one thing I haven't said so far in this presentation? Containers, right? Docker, right? There's the new thing. There's microservices. All of that doesn't matter in the concept of DevOps. So whether or not we're building containerized microservices-based environments, or if we're deploying, let's say, that banking application onto bare metal data center farms, it's all the same. There's a certain style of delivery, a content pipeline, if you will, that is adaptable to all of those environments. Right? So we've changed how we do development. You'll notice a lot of the logos over here. Maybe some of you have used Docker or Chef or Puppet or Jenkins. Jenkins is a big one. Jenkins users here? Yeah, a few, right? So if you think about how developers, they want to use the languages that they like, they want to use the frameworks that they like, the databases that they like, right? They don't want to be constrained, saying you must write in Java and use, a DB2 database. This gives the IT folks within companies the freedom to let the developers choose the technologies that they want to use and still have control and governance and insight over the end-to-end process. So we talked about the delivery pipeline. So I'll tell you right now, right? How many people out there are looking at that picture going, that's not right? He just talked about iterative loops and things. That looks like just like a single process that, you know, sounds like Microsoft from 20 years ago. Guilty. This picture doesn't actually represent, but it's a good way of thinking about it. So a continuous delivery pipeline, you know, starts with developers. There's things that go on to validate the code, and it ends up over here in deployed production. There we go. It looks more like this, right? So as you're moving, you know, in development, there's a lot of iterative loops, right? So as a developer, you know, you may want to be sitting on your laptop, developing against a virtual box that you've deployed locally, sitting in your favorite coffee shop. And you can do that, and you know, you're interacting with your source code repositories, maybe GitHub. You have a continuous integration environment. So when you go ahead and you finally check in the code that you've been working on all day, Jenkins or something like that will pick it up and run the unit test for you automatically, etc. Right? So there's this iterative loop, and then it goes into really the transition between development and production, and that's where this idea of DevOps really becomes very powerful, because you know, the developer doesn't want to care about what data center is going into, what kind of hardware it's going to be running on, what, you know, how to set up, you know, your SQL clusters, you know, what the credentials are for production systems. He really doesn't want to know about that, right? The production guys are very concerned about that. So there's this idea that, you know, the collaboration between production and developers kind of comes into the middle, and this is where the DevOps techniques become very powerful, because in our continuous delivery pipeline, we can now define rules and policies that say when this application's coming down the pipe, when it gets to here and we're going to get ready to stage it for production, we need to replace the database that the developer has chosen with our production database, or we need to set up a disaster recovery scenario that might be geographically dispersed across the globe. Those sorts of things. So developers worry about what they worry about, the production guys worry about what they worry about, and somebody in the middle is actually worrying about the topologies and the business policies, and that's where DevOps becomes very powerful. Right? So this is a much more complex slide to kind of describe the same thing that I've been talking about in terms of, you know, the iterative pieces that happen in a DevOps pipeline. And remember, you know, that I said that DevOps is not just tooling, right? So it's processes, but it's really collaboration. And in order to you know, kind of be effective of this, or how, you know, start your DevOps journey, you really have to start with the fact that you want your developers and your testers and your production guys to talk, right? So you need to create an environment where that happens. You know, we can't live in silos anymore, right? So you'll hear us talk about application release automation. And what that really is it's a technique, right, or a set of techniques that allow us to bring the developers in to the conversation, the operation guys into the conversation, and then provide the tooling to actually, you know, make that continuous delivery pipeline work, right? So release automation is super critical in this process. So we wanted to show you, you know, a little bit about some of the engagements that we have gone into as a company, and kind of give you an idea for the scope and the scale of what has happened in those, right? So the two I'd really like to point out to, task is a healthcare provider, provider of services. And they went through an entire journey with us. We engaged with them. We had conversations with them around, DevOps and how it can improve their processes. If you go onto our website, there's a really good description of the journey that they went through. They actually created a video for us, so I'd encourage you to go look at that. But in short, they went from a 10-hour deployment down to minutes, 45 minutes or so. And at the same time, what they did is they modernized their entire application structure from an old school, very traditional, that's the 10-hour deployment piece, to they are currently running containerized deployments on Amazon Web Services. So it's a really good example of how you can modernize, how you can take care of, take advantage of public cloud infrastructures. And the video can show you kind of step by step on how they did that. Bet365, gambling site in the UK, right? Came to us, and their problem was they have 80 applications deployed across 1,000 servers, right? And they needed to update these pretty much every day, right? So that the problem was that they had gotten themselves into a situation where the process that they were using just was not scalable. They had people that were in the middle of the process. They lost track of their configurations, those sorts of things. So taking their problem and applying automation to it, codifying the policies and the processes that they use to take their applications from their developers, making small changes, right? So that if you're making multiple changes every day, you're not making big changes. You might be pushing 1 or 2 bug fixes in some cases, or one kind of feature change, but it goes all the way down the pipeline and out to one of the 1,000 servers. That's what we did with Bet365, and then you can see, with Charter Communications, reduced by 2/3 the time, and O&B, which is a bank, very very similar to the question that you asked, and we basically kind of cut their time in half. So. This is real, and it can give you tremendous benefits. It can give you tremendous benefits as developers, right? So I saw a lot of developers here. I wrote code, right, for a long time. I carried a pager. Some of you may have pagers on you right now. Something broke. They paged me in. These processes, can really help reduce the breakage that you might get when dependencies are not met. Somebody forgot to check in a file, all of a sudden the build is breaking, etc. Those types of issues from a developer's perspective can really be taken away. And like I said, it's really nice as a developer, you guys have a lot of influence over what your organization is doing in terms of process and how you build software and how you deploy software and how it gets monitored and so on and so forth, right? So it's really nice to be able to say, look, we think for this particular set of applications, Java is the right framework, but for that set of applications, we want to use Go, right? Or Python is really our language of choice, right? Having that freedom as a developer is super nice. Questions on that? I'm gonna move a little bit into where we see the future of automation, and talk a little bit about where we think we're going with it. But I'll stop here and take questions. Yes.
Thank you.
Trước đấy anh có thể giới thiệu qua là anh đến từ công ty nào và biết bản thân.
Yes, I'm Hwang. I'm from Sotruk, a Korean company. Yes, yeah. Nice to meet you, and I'm very thank you to your introduction about automation and the solution to to reduce a lot of resources for product release. But according to your introduction, you have 4 pillars, including the measure, right? So the more the more you can measure, the more reliable you can give to your customer. And I'm sure that in reality, there are many cases it's not easy to measure. So in those cases, do you think that the automatic solution is suitable or not? And can you give some example that your solution may not fit?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
May not
Oh, that may not fit? Okay. Oh. What company did you say you're with? No, I'm just kidding.
Sometimes we can't measure everything that we want. We can't get the monitoring data that we want. But the fact of the matter is if you plan for it and you put platforms in place that support it, like Atomic, right, you'll get a lot more data out of the system, right? And I do believe that if you don't measure it, you have no idea what's going on. And if you have no idea what's going on, you're not doing your job correctly, my view. What is our company's product not suitable for? Yeah. I'm gonna let the business guy answer that.
If you don't want to move fast, if you want to go out of business eventually, then you don't want our products. Seriously though, you'll see all of your competitors, maybe your companies, but for sure your competitors, there's pressure in the business to go faster. Give me more, give it faster, make it more reliable. That's what automation gives you. Not just Atomic, this is not a commercial for Atomic, because I'm an evangelist for automation. I believe in automation. It's how you do things repeatably, reliably, and at pace. John talked about Bet365. They do 80 application releases a day, 35 steps to each release. It's like an engine. And the only way that works is because they've automated it. So I'm sure there were examples where a company so small, doing so few things at such a slow pace, that automation may not help them. That's possible. But I think for most modern companies or companies trying to become modern, going through that digital transformation, automation is a layer that you want to start with. Yeah?
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, and I will say, having been involved with the startup world for quite a few years, every startup right now starts with automation. You know, the things like that you do over and over again, the better, right? So it really is the way things are moving into the future. And as Todd said, you know, there's some evidence to say that if you don't modernize, if you stay doing the same thing that you're doing, if you don't start adopting, you know, DevOps processes, policies, and techniques, that, you know, over the next 10 years, you will become irrelevant and you will be out of the market. So we actually truly believe that this is very critical to the success of companies.
DevOps engineers 30% more pay.
Oh yeah, that's right. So as Todd just pointed out, that at least in the US, folks that are identifying themselves as DevOps engineers or DevOps managers are now starting to command 30% more pay than they did pretty much doing the exact same job with a different title. Yeah. So if you want more money, put that on your resume. All right. I'm going to go on.
Hi, I'm Zun and I'm from RPG Software. And yeah, I have a question about that. I see on the slide that most of the improvement in the automation is about the time you deliver the production and reduce the complexity in the management. But how about a company, a big one? For example, my company, we have 5,000 to 8,000 people who get used to the traditional by live production? What is the risk when we turn out to the automation process, and you know, maybe main risks we have to face when turn to the automation like you present. So what is the risk, and it's worth to try or something? I mean, yes.
Yeah, so if I understand what you're asking, you know, we are presenting things, we're talking about velocity, you know, time to customer interaction with software and so on. There are a lot of other benefits, right? We talk about reliability, we talk about repeatability, you know, and we talk about being able to create higher quality software.